Jin-Ho looked up at the night sky from the window of his lab. The stars were hidden behind the massive ships that had appeared 3 days ago. They hung there, silent and still, like dark clouds promising a storm. "Any new messages?" he asked, turning to Hana. She sat at her computer, eyes fixed on the screen. "Nothing since the first one," she said. Her voice was calm, but Jin-Ho saw the fear in her eyes. Surrender or face silence. That's all they said. The world's leaders had refused to surrender. They had sent messages back, asking for talks, for understanding. The aliens never answered. Jin-Ho checked his watch. It was almost midnight. The military base around them was on high alert. Soldiers ran back and forth outside his lab, guns ready, faces tight with worry. "I don't like this waiting," Jin-Ho said. He picked up his coffee cup and found it empty. "It feels like..." A high-pitched noise cut through the air. Jin-Ho dropped his cup. It broke on the floor, but he didn't hear it. The noise grew louder, pushing into his head like needles. Hana pressed her hands over her ears. Her mouth opened in a scream. But Jin-Ho couldn't hear it. The noise was everything now. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. "Are you okay?" Jin-Ho tried to say. But no sound came out. His lips moved. His throat worked, but there was nothing. Silence. Hana stared at him, her face pale. She tried to speak too. Nothing. Outside, soldiers were grabbing their throats, opening and closing their mouths like fish out of water. One fired his gun into the air. The gun flashed, but made no sound. Jin-Ho ran to his computer and typed quickly. "Asterisk, can you speak asterisk?" Hana read it and shook her head. She typed back. "Asterisk no. What's happening asterisk?" Jin-Ho had no answer. He looked back at the sky. The ships were glowing now, a soft blue light pulsing around them. "Asterisk, they did this asterisk," he typed. "Asterisk, they silenced us asterisk." Alarms should have been ringing, but the base was wrapped in a terrible quiet. Jin-Ho watched as panic spread. Without voices, without the ability to call out orders or warnings, everything fell apart quickly. A soldier ran into the lab, waving his arms. He pointed at the main gate. Jin-Ho and Hana followed him to the window. They were coming down from the ships now. Tall figures in strange armor that seemed to flow around their bodies like water. They didn't walk so much as glide across the ground. They carried no visible weapons, but they didn't need to. The base's defenses opened fire. Tanks, machine guns, everything they had. Jin-Ho saw the flashes, felt the vibrations in the floor, but heard nothing. The aliens moved through it all, untouched. When they reached the soldiers, they simply touched them. One touch, and the soldiers fell, their bodies shaking before going still. Asterisk, we need to go asterisk, Jin-Ho typed to Hana. Asterisk no. Asterisk. They grabbed what they could. Laptops, data drives, Hana's linguistics research. As they ran from the lab, Jin-Ho saw one of the aliens enter the building at the far end of the hallway. They turned and ran the other way, finding a service door that led to the underground tunnels. The base had been built with escape routes for emergencies. This was definitely an emergency. In the dark of the tunnel, Jin-Ho turned on his phone's flashlight. Hana was right behind him, her face wet with tears. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, that they would find a way to fight back. But he couldn't speak the words. The aliens, Jin-Ho thought of them as the mute now, had taken humanity's voice. But they would soon learn. Silencing humanity didn't mean defeating it. It just meant unleashing something worse. 3 months had passed since the day the world went quiet. Jin-Ho sat in the underground bunker, watching people move around him. Everyone used their hands to talk now. Quick movements, finger shapes, and face expressions had become their new language. The bunker had once been a military storage facility. Now it was home to over 200 survivors, scientists, soldiers, and regular people who had escaped the mute's first attack all lived together in the tight space. Jin-Ho looked down at his notebook. His drawings showed the strange devices the mute had placed in major cities. These machines sent out the waves that kept humans from making sounds with their voices. A hand touched his shoulder. It was Ta-One, a man who had once been in special forces. His eyes were hard, but not cold. He had lost his wife and son when the mute came to Seoul. Ta-One made a series of hand signs. Asterisk any progress, asterisk. Jin-Ho shook his head and wrote on his notepad. Asterisk not yet. Need more data, asterisk. Ta-One nodded and walked away. Jin-Ho knew the man wanted action, not more research. But they couldn't fight an enemy they didn't understand. Across the room, a small group gathered around a table. On it sat a dead mute soldier. It had been killed 2 days ago when it found one of their hidden food stores. Ta-One's team had brought it back for study. Jin-Ho joined the group. The alien body was strange. Part flesh, part machine. Its skin was pale blue with lines like circuits running under it. Where a human would have a mouth, it had only smooth skin. Asterisk, how do they talk to each other? Asterisk, Jin-Ho wrote on a whiteboard for all to see. Dr. Park, their biologist, pointed to the alien's head. She had cut open the skull to show the brain. She wrote, asterisk, no speech centers like humans. But look here, asterisk, she pointed to a cluster of silver threads in the brain. Asterisk, these might be for some kind of direct mind talk, asterisk. Jin-Ho studied the alien brain. Something about those silver threads reminded him of radio antennas. An idea began to form in his mind. A sudden commotion at the bunker entrance caught everyone's attention. 2 scouts ran in, their hands moving quickly in urgent signs. Asterisk, mute patrol coming this way, asterisk. Everyone moved fast, hiding their work. The dead alien was covered and moved to a hidden room. Lights were dimmed. People took their positions. Jin-Ho grabbed his notebook and hurried to his sleeping area. Under his thin mattress, he kept a small device he had been working on. It looked like a simple radio, but he had modified it to detect the strange signals the mutes sent to each other. He slipped the device into his pocket just as Ta-One appeared with a gun. He handed Jin-Ho another one and pointed up. Asterisk, hide in the air vents. If they find us, escape with your research, asterisk. Jin-Ho nodded. His work was too important to lose. If the mute could block human speech, maybe humans could block whatever the mute used to communicate. As he climbed into the hidden vent, Jin-Ho thought about Hana. They had been separated during their escape from the base. Was she still alive? Had she been taken, like so many others? From his hiding spot, Jin-Ho could see the main room of the bunker. People sat quietly, pretending to eat or sleep as if this was just a normal shelter. Nothing to suggest it was the headquarters of the resistance. The waiting was the worst part. Jin-Ho held his breath as minutes passed. Then the scouts returned, their hands showing the all-clear sign. The mute patrol had passed by without finding them. As people returned to their work, Jin-Ho climbed down. He pulled out his device and turned it on. For a moment, he heard nothing. Then a faint sound came through. Not quite a voice, not quite a machine noise, but something in between. He was listening to the mute talk, and if he could hear them, maybe soon he could silence them too. Jin-Ho couldn't sleep. The sounds he had recorded from the mute played over and over in his mind. He sat up in his small bed and turned on his flashlight. The bunker was quiet except for the soft sounds of people breathing. He opened his notebook and looked at his notes. The mute communicated using sounds humans couldn't normally hear. Very high sounds, like the ones that only dogs can hear, but his device could catch them. Jin-Ho had a new idea. If the mute used these sounds to talk, maybe these same sounds could hurt them if they were very loud. He got up quietly and moved to his work table. Using small tools, he began to change his listening device into something new. If he was right, this could be their first real weapon against the mute. Morning came. Ta-One found Jin-Ho still working. his eyes red from no sleep. Asterisk, what is this? Asterisk, Ta-One signed with his hands. Jinho wrote on his pad. Asterisk, a weapon. I think the mute are sensitive to certain sounds. This might hurt them. Asterisk. Tai-One's eyes lit up. After months of hiding and running, the idea of fighting back made him stand taller. Asterisk, how do we test it? Asterisk, he signed. Jinho frowned. They would need to use it on a real mute to know if it worked. That meant a dangerous mission outside. Asterisk, we need parts from the old base. Asterisk, Jinho wrote. Asterisk, go. Make it stronger. Asterisk. Tai-One nodded. Asterisk, I'll take a team today. Asterisk. As Tai-One gathered his team, Jinho kept working. By midday, he had a small box with a speaker on it. It looked simple, but it could make sounds at the exact pitch that the mute used to communicate. Tai-One left with 5 others. They wore old military clothes and carried whatever weapons they had, mostly knives, and a few guns with limited bullets. Their mission was dangerous, but they had no choice. Hours passed. Jinho checked his watch again and again. The team should have been back by now. Suddenly, the bunker door opened. Tai-One rushed in, carrying a young woman. 3 of his team followed. 2 were missing. The woman was small and thin. Her clothes were dirty and torn. She looked weak, but her eyes were alert and bright. Asterisk, who is this? Asterisk, someone signed. Tai-One put the woman down on a chair and signed quickly. Asterisk found her hiding in a music store near the base. She showed us something important. Asterisk. The woman looked around at all the people. She seemed scared but also hopeful to see so many humans. She pulled something from her bag. It was a small flute. Jinho watched, confused. Why bring a musical instrument here? The woman put the flute to her lips. Of course, no sound came when she blew into it. The mute's silencing field stopped all human-made sounds, but she kept playing, her fingers moving over the holes. Tai-One signed excitedly. Asterisk, she played this near a mute patrol. They couldn't hear it, but they felt something. They became confused, angry. One even fell down. Asterisk. Jinho's heart beat faster. He took the flute and looked at it closely. Then he wrote, Asterisk, what's your name? Asterisk. The woman took his pen and wrote, Asterisk, Mijin. I was a music student. Asterisk. Asterisk, how did you know the flute would affect them? Asterisk, Jinho wrote. Asterisk, I didn't. Asterisk, she answered. Asterisk, he just missed music. But when I played, I saw them react. They hate music. Asterisk. Jinho turned to his device on the table. This changed everything. If the mute were sensitive to music notes, not just their own communication sounds, then maybe his weapon could be even more effective. He showed Mijin his device and wrote, Asterisk, can you help me make this better? Asterisk. Mijin nodded. For the first time in months, Jinho felt real hope. The mute had silenced humanity's voice, but they couldn't silence human creativity. And now, that creativity would become a weapon. In another part of the city, Hannah watched the mute from her place in their work camp. She had been captured during the early days of the invasion. The aliens had not killed her, but put her to work sorting human things they had collected. Secretly, she had been studying them, learning their patterns. And she had discovered something they didn't know she knew, something that might help humanity fight back. Jinho held the small device in his hands. After days of work with Mijin, they had created something new. It looked like a box with dials and a special speaker. Jinho called it the sound bomb. It's ready, he wrote on the board for everyone to see. Tai-One studied the device with careful eyes. How far will it work? He signed. Jinho drew a small circle on his map, only about 20 meters around. We need to get close to them. Tai-One nodded. He understood the risk. Getting close to the mute was dangerous. They could sense humans nearby, like sharks smelling blood in water. Mei Jin touched the device, adjusting one of the dials. She had shown Jin Ho how different musical notes affected the mute in different ways. Some notes made them confused. Others seemed to cause them pain. "We need to test it," Taiwan signed. "I know a small mute checkpoint not far from here." Jin Ho looked at the few weapons they had. It wasn't much against the mute's power, but they had to try. That night, Jin Ho, Taiwan, and 4 others prepared for the mission. They covered their faces with dark cloth and took only what they needed. The sound bomb was in Jin Ho's backpack. Mei Jin watched them get ready. She wrote on a paper and gave it to Jin Ho. "Be careful. Come back." Jin Ho nodded and put the note in his pocket. Outside, the night was cold and dark. The streets of what was once a busy city were empty now. The only movement came from mute patrols or hungry animals. The team moved silently through back alleys and broken buildings. They knew how to stay hidden after months of practice. After an hour, they'd reached the checkpoint. It was a small building with 2 mute guards outside. They stood perfectly still, like statues, but Jin Ho knew they were watching everything. Taiwan made hand signals, and the team spread out. Jin Ho stayed with Taiwan, the sound bomb ready in his hands. When everyone was in position, Jin Ho turned on the device. He couldn't hear anything. Humans still couldn't make or hear sounds, but he knew it was working from the small light on top. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the mute guards began to move strangely. They turned their heads back and forth, as if looking for something. One of them put its hands to the sides of its head. Jin Ho turned the dial higher. The effect was immediate. Both guards fell to their knees. One seemed to be trying to scream, though no sound came out. The other crawled away, moving like it was in terrible pain. Taiwan signaled, and 2 team members rushed forward. Using special knives they had made from mute armor, they attacked the guards. It was over quickly. Jin Ho couldn't believe it. Their weapon had worked. They had just killed 2 mute soldiers with sound. Taiwan grabbed Jin Ho's arm and pointed. A 3rd mute was coming out of the building. It hadn't fallen like the others. It moved towards them with strange, jerking steps. Jin Ho turned the dial to its highest setting. The mute stopped moving. It stood completely still, then slowly sank to the ground. But it wasn't dead. Taiwan was about to finish it when Jin Ho stopped him. He wrote quickly, "We need one alive. For study." Taiwan didn't look happy, but he nodded. They tied up the mute with strong wire and covered its head. The trip back to the bunker was slow and careful. Carrying a mute prisoner was dangerous, but the knowledge they could gain was worth the risk. Meanwhile, in the mute work camp, Hana had been watching the aliens carefully. She had noticed something important. The mute never made mistakes in their work, except when working with human brains. Every day, mute scientists took some humans away. Those humans never returned. But Hana had seen inside the lab once, when cleaning. She saw human brains in clear containers, with mute machines connected to them. They were studying human speech. They were trying to understand how humans made sounds, and they seemed afraid of what they found. Hana knew she had to get this information to the resistance. Somehow, she had to escape and find Jin Ho, because what she had learned might be the key to defeating the mute once and for all. The mute prisoner lay on a table in the middle of the bunker's lab. It didn't move much, but its eyes followed everyone who came near. Jin Ho had never been this close to a living mute before. Its skin looked like blue plastic with silver lines running under it. Dr. Park studied the alien with careful hands. She had been a brain doctor before the invasion. Now she used her skills to understand their enemy. Jin Ho watched as she pointed to different parts of the mute's head. She wrote on a board, *, no ears like humans, but these spots on the side of its head pick up vibrations, *. Mei Jin stood next to Jin Ho. She had been helping him make more sound bombs. She wrote, * like how snakes feel vibrations through the ground, *. Dr. Park nodded. Then she pointed to a strange silver ball at the base of the mute's skull. Asterisk, this seems to be how they talk to each other. It sends out waves that other mute can feel. Asterisk. Jin-Ho studied the silver ball closely. It looked like a small radio tower. This explained how the mute could talk without sound. They sent signals directly from mind to mind. Taiwan entered the lab with news. He signed quickly. Asterisk, the sound bombs worked at 2 more checkpoints. We now control 3 blocks of the city. Asterisk. Jin-Ho felt proud. Their weapon was working. But he knew they needed more power to really hurt the mute. He wrote, asterisk, we need to make bigger sound bombs. Ones that can hit many mute at once. Asterisk. Mai Jin touched his arm. She had an idea. She drew a picture of big speakers, like the ones used at music concerts. Then she drew the city's old sports stadium. Jin-Ho understood at once. The stadium had huge speakers that could be heard for miles. If they could get those speakers working and connect them to their sound bomb. But there was a problem. The stadium was in an area controlled by the mute. It would be very dangerous to go there. As they made plans, the mute prisoner suddenly began to shake. Its body jumped and twisted on the table. The silver lines under its skin glowed bright. Dr. Park stepped back in fear. She wrote quickly, asterisk, it's trying to call others. Asterisk. Jin-Ho grabbed the sound bomb and turned it on. The mute stopped moving at once. Its eyes closed and its body went still. Asterisk, is it dead? Asterisk, Ta-One signed. Dr. Park checked. Asterisk, no. Just knocked out, but we learned something important. They can call for help even when tied up. Asterisk. This was bad news. It meant they couldn't keep the prisoner for long. Sooner or later, other mute would come looking for it. Jin-Ho made a hard choice. He wrote, asterisk, we need to attack soon, before they know what we can do. Asterisk. Taiwan agreed. They would go to the stadium tomorrow. It would be their biggest mission yet. That night, as others slept, Jin-Ho worked on the sound bombs. He made them stronger and smaller. Mai Jin helped, showing him how to tune them to the exact notes that hurt the mute most. As they worked, Mai Jin wrote a question. Asterisk, do you think we can really win? Asterisk. Jin-Ho thought for a moment. The mute were strong. They had better weapons and control of the skies. But they had one weakness. They feared human sounds. And now humans had found a way to use that fear against them. He wrote back, asterisk, yes, we can win. We just need to be loud enough. Asterisk. Miles away, in the mute work camp, Hana had made a discovery. While cleaning the mute labs, she found a map. It showed 5 big circles around the world. These must be the machines that kept humans silent. If these machines could be destroyed, humans might speak again. And from what she had seen in the lab, that was the mute's greatest fear. Hana memorized the map. She had already decided. Tonight, she would escape. She would find Jin-Ho and the resistance, and she would tell them how to make humanity's voice heard again. The old sports stadium stood tall against the night sky. Once, it had held thousands of cheering fans. Now it was silent and dark, like everything else in the city. Jin-Ho, Ta-One, and 12 others hid behind broken cars, watching the stadium entrance. 4 mute guards stood there, their bodies still except for small movements of their heads as they scanned the area. Jin-Ho checked his sound bomb one last time. Mai Jin had helped him make it stronger than before. They called this new version the Screamer. Taiwan tapped Jin-Ho's shoulder and pointed to a small side door. 2 team members were already moving toward it, staying low and in the shadows. The plan was simple but dangerous. Half the team would enter through the side door and set up sound bombs inside. The other half would attack the main entrance to draw attention away from them. Jin-Ho nodded to Taiwan. It was time. Taiwan raised his hand, then dropped it quickly. 6 resistance fighters ran forward, firing their few guns at the mute guards. The weapons made no sound, but the bullets still worked. The mute turned toward the attack, their bodies glowing with blue light. They didn't use guns. Instead, they pointed their hands, and blue energy shot out, burning whatever it touched. One resistance fighter fell, his chest smoking. The others kept moving, dodging the blue fire and getting closer. Jin-ho and his group ran to the side door. Inside, the stadium was dark and dusty. They moved quickly toward the control room, where the big speakers were controlled. Jin-ho's heart beat fast as they climbed stairs and moved through empty halls. Twice they had to hide as Newt soldiers ran past, heading toward the fight outside. Finally, they'd reached the control room. Jin-ho went straight to the main panel. Years of working with sound equipment helped him understand what to do. He connected his screamer to the stadium's system. Mi-Jin had shown him exactly which wires to use. He turned dials and flipped switches, preparing the biggest sound attack they had ever tried. Outside, the fight was going badly. The Mute were too strong, their weapons too powerful. 3 more resistance fighters had fallen. Taiwan and the others were barely holding on. Jin-ho finished the connections. He looked at his team and held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. He pressed the button. The stadium's giant speakers came to life. Humans couldn't hear the sound, but they could feel it. A pressure in the air, a vibration in their bones. The effect on the Mute was immediate and terrible. Outside, the 4 Mute guards collapsed, their bodies shaking wildly. Blue light poured from their eyes and mouths as they twisted on the ground. Inside the stadium, Mute soldiers fell wherever they stood. Some tried to run but couldn't control their bodies. Others clawed at their heads, as if trying to stop the sound from entering. Jin-ho watched through the control room window. The sound bomb was working better than he had ever hoped, but he knew they didn't have much time before more Mute came. He signaled to his team. They needed to leave now. As they ran back through the stadium, Jin-ho saw something strange. The Mute bodies were changing. The silver lines under their skin were breaking apart. Some Mute were even starting to smoke, as if burning from inside. The sound wasn't just hurting them, it was killing them. Outside, Taiwan gathered the survivors. They had lost 5 people, but they had won a big victory. The Mute in this area were dead or dying. As they hurried back to their bunker, Jin-ho's mind raced with new ideas. If one stadium could do this much damage, what could many do? If they could set up sound bombs all over the city. They were nearly back when a small figure stepped out from a building ahead. Everyone raised their weapons, then stopped in surprise. It was a woman, thin and dirty, but standing tall. Jin-ho stared in shock. He knew her face. "Hana," he mouthed, though no sound came out. She smiled and nodded. Then she held up a small device that looked like a Mute communicator. She had escaped, and she had brought something with her that might change everything. The resistance had found its voice, and soon, the whole world would hear it. The bunker was more alive than it had been in months. People gathered around Hannah as she showed them what she had stolen from the Mute work camp. "This is a map of the silencing machines," she wrote on a large board. Everyone stared at the 5 circles. She drew around a map of Earth, 1 in each continent. "Destroy them, and humans can speak again." Jin-ho studied the map carefully. The closest machine was only 50 miles away, in what used to be a government building. He looked at Hana with new respect. She had survived months in a Mute work camp, learned their secrets, and escaped. Now she brought them the most important information yet. Taiwan was already planning the attack. He wrote, "We need to hit this machine with everything we have." Jin-ho nodded, "And we need to tell other resistance groups about the other machines." Mi-Jin touched Jin-ho's arm. She pointed to the sound bombs they had made, then to her throat, then made a question sign with her hands. Jin-ho understood. "If we destroy the machine, will we be able to speak again?" Hana nodded. "The Mute fear human voices most of all," she wrote. "That's why they silenced us first." Over the next 3 days, they prepared for the biggest attack yet. Jin Ho and Mei Jin made 10 new screamers, stronger than before. Taiwan trained 60 fighters, the most they had ever sent on one mission. Meanwhile, Hana shared more of what she had learned. The mute were cutting open human heads to study their brains. They wanted to know how humans made sounds, and they were afraid of what humans might do if they could speak again. On the 4th day, they were ready. The fighters moved out in small groups, taking different paths to the target. Jin Ho went with Taiwan, Hana, and Mi Jin in the lead group. The government building was huge, with tall white walls and many windows. Mute guards stood at every entrance. Their blue skin glowed faintly in the early morning light. Jin Ho checked his screamer one last time. This one was special. Mei Jin had helped him tune it to the exact notes that hurt the mute most. Taiwan gave the signal. All around the building, resistance fighters turned on their sound bombs at the same time. The effect was immediate. Mute guards fell to the ground, their bodies shaking. Blue light poured from their eyes as the sound tore through them. Now, Taiwan signed, and the attack teams rushed forward. Inside the building, more mute were falling, confused by the sound. The resistance fighters moved quickly, killing any mute still standing. Jin Ho, Hana, and Mi Jin followed a map Hana had drawn. The silencing machine would be in the center of the building, in the largest room. They found it on the 5th floor. It was bigger than Jin Ho had expected, a tall silver tower with blue light pulsing around it. 5 mutes stood guard, but they were already on their knees from the sound bombs. Jin Ho placed his special screamer right next to the machine. He turned it to full power, then backed away quickly. The sound bomb made the air itself seem to shake. The mute guards screamed without sound, their bodies twisting in pain. Then they stopped moving completely. The machine began to change color, from blue to red. Small explosions popped along its sides. The blue light flickered and died. And then something amazing happened. A sound filled the air. A real sound that Jin Ho could hear with his ears. It was the hum of the building's old lights. He could hear again. Jin Ho looked at Hana and Mi Jin. Their eyes were wide with shock. "Can you?" Jin Ho stopped, surprised by his own voice. It was rough from months of not being used, but it was there. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," Hana whispered. Her voice cracked, but tears of joy ran down her face. "I can hear you." Mi Jin laughed, the sound beautiful after so much silence. Outside, they could hear distant explosions and gunfire. Real sounds. The battle was still going on, but now with a soundtrack. "We need to help the others," Jin Ho said. As they ran back through the building, they shouted to each other, using their voices for the first time in months. Each word felt like freedom. They reached the main entrance just as Taiwan came in with his team. "We can speak," Jin Ho called to him. Taiwan's face showed pure joy. He opened his mouth and said his first words in a very long time. Now the real fight begins. The news spread quickly. In one part of the world, humans could speak again. The resistance had destroyed one of the 5 silencing machines. Jin Ho stood on top of a small hill, watching people gather below. Hundreds of them had come out of hiding when they found they could speak. Some cried, others sang. Many just talked and talked, as if making up for all the silent months. "It's beautiful," Hana said, standing beside him. Her voice was getting stronger each day. "And powerful," Jin Ho added. "The mute are running away from areas where we can speak." It was true. Since the silencing machine was destroyed, the mute had pulled back from the entire region. They seemed afraid of human voices. Mi Jin approached them, followed by 30 people carrying musical instruments. She had been gathering musicians from all over the city. "We're ready," she said softly. Her voice was lovely, even though she used it carefully, like something that might break. Jin Ho nodded. Mi Jin's idea was brilliant. If the mute hated music played on instruments, they would hate humans singing even more. Taiwan joined them, carrying new maps. We've made contact with resistance groups in other countries, he said. They're planning attacks on the other silencing machines. How soon? Hannah asked. Within days. But there's something else. Taiwan pointed to the sky. The mute mothership is moving. It's coming here. Jin Ho looked up. He could see it now, the biggest of the mute ships, like a dark cloud blocking the stars. They're scared, Hannah said. They know what happens if all humans can speak again. What exactly did you learn in their labs? Jin Ho asked. This question had been on his mind for days. Hannah's face grew serious. They're studying our brains because they can't understand how we make sounds. Their species evolved without voices. They communicate only with their minds. And they're afraid of sounds. Mi Jin asked. Not all sounds, just organized ones. Speech. Music. They call it the speaking gift. Hannah looked at the mothership. They want to take our brains to understand how we do it. Jin Ho felt a chill. The mute wanted to steal human voices by taking their brains. We need to speed up our plans, he said. Mi Jin, how soon can your choir be ready? Tomorrow, she said, but we'll need bigger speakers. Jin Ho thought for a moment. The radio tower. It has speakers that can be heard for miles. Taiwan nodded. I'll gather our fighters. We take the tower tonight. That night, as they prepared for battle, Jin Ho tested a new device. It was like the sound bomb, but designed to work with human voices instead of just sounds. Speak into this, he told Mi Jin, handing her a microphone. Mi Jin took a deep breath and sang a single clear note. The device glowed blue, then sent the sound out much louder than before. Even Jin Ho felt uncomfortable at the amplified sound. For the mute, it would be torture. By morning, they were in position. 200 fighters had taken the radio tower after a short battle. The mute had not expected an attack there and were easily defeated. Mi Jin stood with her choir on the roof of the tower. 30 voices ready to sing. Jin Ho's amplifiers were set up around them, pointed at the sky. The mute mothership hung directly above the city now. Smaller ships were landing, bringing thousands of mute soldiers. They're making a final push to stop us, Taiwan said. They know what we're planning. Jin Ho looked at Hannah. Will this work? Hannah watched the mothership with steady eyes. They silenced us because they feared our voices. Now they'll learn why. Mi Jin raised her hands. The choir members stood straight and tall. Ready? She asked Jin Ho. He turned on the amplifiers. Ready. Mi Jin brought her hands down, and 30 human voices rose as one. The song started soft, then grew stronger. The amplifiers sent it out over the city, into the sky, toward the mute ships. The effect was immediate. The smaller ships began to fly erratically. Some crashed into buildings. Others flew away as fast as they could. The mothership itself seemed to shudder in the sky. Jin Ho watched in awe. Human voices, once silenced, had become the most powerful weapon on Earth. Humanity was speaking again, and the mute were finally listening. The mute mothership hung low in the sky, dark and threatening. It had stopped moving after the choir's attack, but now it glowed with angry blue light. The mute were preparing something big. They're not running, Taiwan said, watching through binoculars. They're gathering their forces. Jin Ho nodded. This is their last stand. They know if we win here, we win everywhere. News had come in from across the world. 2 more silencing machines had been destroyed. Humans in 3 parts of the world could speak again. The other 2 would fall soon. We need to strike at the heart, Hannah said. She pointed at the mothership. Their central brain is in there. If we can reach it, we can end this war. How do we get up there? Taiwan asked. Mi Jin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. We make them come down to us. The plan took shape quickly. Mi Jin would lead the largest corps yet. 500 voices gathered from all over the free zone. They would sing at the mute, drawing them into a trap. Meanwhile, A small team would capture one of their smaller ships and use it to reach the mothership. As night fell, they moved into position. The choir gathered in the old stadium, surrounded by Jinho's amplifiers. Taiwan led 50 fighters to the landing area where mute ships were coming down. Jinho, Hana, and 6 others hid near the landing area, waiting to board a ship. "Remember what we learned from the captured mute," Hana told them. "Their ships respond to their mind signals. I know how to imitate those signals with this." She held up a small device she had made from mute technology. The choir began to sing. Even from far away, Jinho could hear them. 500 human voices raised together, amplified by his machines. The sound rolled across the city like a wave. The reaction from the mute was immediate. The mothership pulsed with angry light. Dozens of smaller ships poured out, heading toward the stadium. Now, Taiwan signaled, and his fighters attacked the landing area with sound bombs. The mute guards fell, twisted by pain. Jinho and his team ran forward, boarding the nearest small ship before more mute could arrive. Inside, Hana moved quickly to the control area. She placed her device on a glowing panel. The ship hummed and lifted off the ground. "It's working," Jinho said. The small ship rose, heading straight for the mothership. Behind them, the choir sang louder. Jinho could see mute ships flying in confusion, some crashing, others firing weapons that missed their targets. They reached the mothership and found an entry port. Hana's device opened it, and they slipped inside. The halls of the mothership were wide and glowing with blue light. Mute soldiers ran past, not noticing the humans at first. They were too focused on the attack below. "This way," Hana whispered, leading them deeper into the ship. "The central brain will be in the middle." They found it in a large round room. A giant silver ball pulsed with light, surrounded by smaller versions of the silencing machines. "That's it," Hana said. "Their hive mind. It controls all mute on Earth." Jinho set up the special device they had brought, a modified version of his amplifier, designed to play a recording of the choir directly into the central brain. But before he could turn it on, a door opened. 20 mute soldiers entered, led by one larger than the rest. This one's skin was dark blue, almost purple, and it wore a kind of crown. "Their leader," Hana whispered. The mute leader stepped forward, looking at the humans with strange eyes. It raised a hand, and the soldiers pointed their weapons. Jinho knew they had only seconds. He lunged for the device and pressed the button. The choir's voices filled the room, so loud that Jinho and the others covered their ears. The mute soldiers fell immediately, their bodies shaking. The leader stayed standing longer, fighting against the sound. It reached toward Jinho, its face twisted in what looked like hate. Then the silver ball began to crack. Light poured out from the breaks. The mute leader turned to it in panic. "Run," Jinho shouted to his team. "It's going to explode." They ran back the way they had come, the sound of the choir still playing behind them. They reached their small ship just as explosions began to rock the mothership. As they flew away, Jinho looked back. The mothership was breaking apart, blue fire pouring from its wounds. All across the city, mute soldiers were falling, their connection to the central brain broken. "It's over," Hana said softly. Jinho nodded. "They silenced humanity, and we showed them what happens when we find our voice again." The mothership collapsed in a final explosion that lit up the night sky like a new sun. Humanity had won, and now they would speak again.